I mean, I never thought you could actually survive only eating meat. I always thought you needed the vitamins from vegetables. Obviously, when I figured out that food was the main issue I was having, like doctors that deal with chronic illness and refuse to look at lifestyle, I was like, do you know how many people you're harming?
Can one person's carnivore journey change the world? Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and welcome to my channel where I review and debunk nutritional information online. For a long time, I've heard like an urban legend that Mikhaila Peterson, daughter of Jordan Peterson, in a universe of podcasts and interviews, reversed her own health issues and has had massive popularity and influence among her followers. And so thank you for sending this. This is an interview with Mikhaila Peterson recently to talk about her journey and how it's affected other people and how it's affected her and what she's doing now. And I think a very famous person said that actually the only way the world has changed is through the influence of one person. So yes, your influence is very important. And if you've had a change from a diet, low carb, carnivore, it's up to us really to pass along that baton. Grassroots change, relatives, friends, or sending videos like this to other people. So let's see what Mikhaila Peterson says, and be sure to wait till the end to get my final thoughts. Confused by all the information out there about the keto diet? In my online course, Keto Made Simple, I'll teach you a safe, simple, clinically proven way to do it. In fact, you'll learn the same exact approach I've been teaching my patients for over 25 years. No macros, no weighing and measuring food, no special gadgets or apps, just a straightforward and uncomplicated approach that will help you lose weight, improve your blood sugar and blood pressure, crush cravings, control your hunger, and feel your best. Visit adaptyourlifeacademy.com to learn more and to enroll.
All right, Mikhaila Peterson, what are a few things that you've changed your mind on or changed perspective on in the last 5 or so years?
So, food playing a role in health. And I guess this was more like 7 years ago, but I was completely opposed to food playing any role in health, which sounds ridiculous, but food playing a role in health, people being able to survive only eating meat, that was mind-blowing. Let's see, what else? Oh, trusting doctors. I grew up in the medical system. I was at the doctor's once a month at minimum since I was maybe 6. They figured out I had arthritis when I was 7. Obviously, when I figured out that food was the main issue I was having, and like food intolerances and whatever, I completely lost faith in the medical system. So I don't throw all doctors under the bus.
Well, yeah, does what you eat matter? Does what you eat and drink affect how your body works? Of course, and yet it is as if we grew up in an era where that was just not talked about, not emphasized. It occurred to me recently as I was going through the gas station that I can't get bad gas. I can't get dirty gas, junk gas. And well, it is ultra processed, but that's a different topic. But anyway, so you can go into the gas station inside and get junk food for the human, but you can't get bad gas for the car, because of course you wouldn't put dirty gas into the car, but does it matter what we eat? So this is huge. The first point here is what you eat and drink really does matter. Now there's, I think, a wide range of tolerance of what humans can do, and depending on what age you are, you have more resiliency depending on the differences of what you're eating, I think, and that so it gets confusing. Or you might not have to worry about what you eat until a certain age or until a certain diagnosis occurs, and then you want to go to a doctor who talks to you about the food. But so here, the lesson one, that what you eat and drink matters. We'll explore more about trusting doctors, and you want to, I think, see a doctor that asks you what you eat and drink in detail and knows about how what we eat can affect our health.
So I went down to what I now know was a more restrictive version of the autoimmune paleo diet. And 30 days on that, And I was on all my medications except for the medications for arthritis, because I'd cut those out a little bit earlier to monitor the arthritic reactions. 30 days on the restricted autoimmune paleo diet, and I lost 3 pant sizes. I lost 5 pounds in 3 pant sizes. That's how bloated I was. Like, that wasn't a lot of weight. My face slimmed down, my skin healed.
Yeah, so here you hear the story. I didn't know the detail, that she had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition, which means nobody really knows what causes it. It's your body attacking itself and causing severe joint pains and deformities, and a very serious condition. You would be followed by a rheumatology specialist with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And so the idea of going, she calls it a autoimmune modified paleo diet. Basically, you're cutting out all of the possible contributing factors from processed foods, the additives, the keeping the carbs super low as well, because in many people carbohydrates are pro-inflammatory, and arthritis is an inflammatory disease. So basically it's a carnivore-ish type of diet, the autoimmune paleo diet. You may remember paleo, primal, hunter-gatherer is the concept that humans evolved by actually eating meat and eating animal-sourced foods. So the idea there is it makes sense historically and evolutionarily to eat a paleo or primal or hunter-gatherer type of diet. There were books, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago with these titles. Now a lot of books have keto in them, but it carries that same elimination diet sort of format where you're eliminating all those other things and just eating meat or a very small amount of vegetables.
Okay, so moving into the second point that you've changed your mind on, surrounding an all-meat diet, right? So that was, what was your perspective? Did you have a different perspective on meat entirely? Or, because 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, people weren't really talking about carnivore. I mean, there were some fringe avenues talking about it, but were you kind of anti-meat? Were you a plant-based person? What was the perspective there that had to shift so much?
I don't think I had to shift that much. I mean, I never thought you could actually survive only eating meat.
Yeah.
I always thought you needed the vitamins from vegetables. So it was mostly that shift. I was never anti-meat. Like, my grandpa hunted. I always thought meat was a health food. I never tried being a vegetarian. I cut out pork when I was 16 because I watched some movie and it made me sad about pigs. And I was like, okay, I'll eat other meat, but I'm not going to eat pork.
Well, so a couple points there. One is, yes, you can be healthy by eating a carnivore-ish kind of diet, mainly meat. You can get all of the nutrition that you need with, paying some attention to what you eat, but the idea that you have to worry and have fruits every day for your vitamin C, that's just not the case. So when some people, especially those who are sensitive, see the way agribusiness has a way of killing animals, often the child or the adult, the sensitive person will say, well, I don't want to eat that because then I'll be perpetuating that treatment of the animals. I think that's a real valid issue, but it shouldn't lead you into an unhealthy sort of diet. Although, and I've seen that happen, where if someone chooses to do a non-animal based diet, like if Mikhaila did that, and I guess she probably was eating a lot of vegetarian type foods, she was unhealthy as a result of it. So switching away from that and actually acknowledging that the animal source food, of course, she still doesn't eat pork because of that one video she saw. So you want to eat things that you're comfortable eating, but I've met people who will not eat any kind of animal products, and I think that's taking it to an extreme. There actually are ways to treat animals, and the people I know who are in that world say, come visit a cattle ranch where they take care of these animals. The farmer is going out, the rancher is going out and finding the animal in the blizzard if it can't make its way back. So anyway, the treatment of animals is an important issue. And here she decided not to have pork. The main point is choose what you like and what you're comfortable eating, and it may actually help your medical condition. Here it was just 30 days of changing the food, and she felt so much better, she says.
So it wasn't a huge shift, but I mean, it was pretty mind-blowing to find out. Like when I went on the all-meat diet, my vitamins recovered. So I was deficient in a lot of B vitamins, and they all went up. And I was like, oh, my blood work has been weirdly deficient since I was a kid. Like vitamin D's always been low. My zinc was always low. My zinc recovered only eating meat. And so a bunch of vitamins that were also low on the kind of autoimmune paleo diet recovered eating meat. And that was definitely mind-blowing, like for my whole family, especially for such a long period of time.
Yeah, so there are animals called carnivores that only eat other animals. They only eat meat, and they don't develop scurvy or other vitamin deficiencies. The concept of an anti-nutrient is important, so that if you eat meat, you get all the vitamins and minerals you need to metabolize the meat, the energy there. If you eat something that's just pure sugar just has the energy, and it doesn't give you any vitamins and minerals to metabolize that energy that you were just given. It used to be called an anti-nutrient, the highly refined sugars and grains and starches, because it didn't provide you with that nutrition. So the food industry comes up with the idea, let's spray vitamins onto these foods. So that's called fortified. Fortification of a food basically means they spray the vitamins on it that it didn't have to start with. So yeah, I think it's surprising to a lot of people that you can actually be healthy and get complete nutrition without eating vegetables at all, let alone reverse a serious medical condition that the doctors didn't know how to reverse.
Especially for such a long period of time, because initially we were going to try it as an elimination diet, and then we couldn't reintroduce anything without having autoimmune flare-ups. So yeah, that was a little shocking.
Definitely. That's going to be eye-opening for you.
Yeah.
So if there's no sign of you going back. I mean, you're good on meat.
This is the next question. Yeah, is it okay for a long period of time to not eat vegetables and fruits? And I think it's an open question. Definitely in her case, she felt better by just eating meat. And then in my case, where I'm in a clinic teaching people to do a carnivore-ish type of diet, I teach people to have 2 cups of leafy greens and 1 cup of a non-starchy vegetable for the whole day. What we do is we monitor medical issues and conditions just like any other doctor would to see if anything changes in a bad way. So it's not like you are in the dark. You have your eyes wide open when you follow a program like this over time and find a doctor who will, tolerate you doing it and not spend time trying to talk you out of it unless they have a really important issue or can point out to you that there is a serious problem for you eating this way.
No, I do think that there's something that I haven't figured out that's bugging me. And I always thought, well, maybe it's a gut issue. Maybe it's some sort of dysbiosis. Maybe it's a viral issue. And so more recently, I think it was from being exposed to mold. And I'm trying to treat that damage. Our basement, I grew up in the basement of my family's house in Toronto, and there was a leak that we didn't find for years, and there was black mold all behind the drywall in that basement. So I think that could have contributed to it, because when I moved to Florida, I had some symptoms reemerge when I was exposed to mold again, even though my diet stayed the same. So that's the theory I'm looking at. And I do think if you've healed, you should be able to do something like the lion diet, eat meat only, and then slowly reintroduce and figure out what's bothering you.
So if you're not familiar with all the different types of carnivore diets, the lion diet is strictly just meat. You can't have coffee for heaven's sake. I mean, a lion can't make coffee. So it's a really restrictive kind of elimination diet, meaning that you're going to be taking away pretty much all possible offenders for the food sensitivity that you might have. Is it possible that one of these foods or additives is causing this reaction to have autoimmunity, things like Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. Nobody really knows why someone is getting that attacking on themselves. So the Lion diet would be a strict way to just have good nutrition without any of these additives. If you're healing, or you've healed, as she's saying, start adding back things. But I don't know. Well, you have to look at it in a trial and error sort of way. And I think rest assured that if you monitor things, it can be healthy to not add back things if you are finding that any sort of added carb, any sort of vegetable or fruit is causing a reaction. I've heard people tell me that it hurts when they eat certain foods, and for goodness sake, if it hurts, try not having that for a while and see if things improve. Someone told me recently it hurt whenever they ate vegetables, and literally hurt, and so you want to follow your body's response. But no one ever said it was okay not to eat vegetables for this certain individual. So I really like the interviews so far, and it looks like Mikhaila has done a lot of sleuthing out, a lot of homework, has been in the medical system talking to doctors for decades, looks like. So a very knowledgeable person about what the medical system knows and what doesn't know about food.
But there's so many factors here, and even testing gut dysbiosis, like you can do stool tests and things, they're not very accurate. It's pretty difficult to get a handle on that. Definitely. So no, like my plan is to figure out how to reincorporate foods, but I'm 6 years in and I haven't figured it out yet. I still think I will. Yeah. I'm very optimistic.
For sure.
So the important point here is that it might not just be food. If it is an environment, if it is the mold, if it's the other sort of environmental toxin allergy, you have to consider that, of course, and the current medical system, at least around where I live, doesn't really account for that environmental sourcing of problem. Food being an environmental issue, right? So food is not genetic, although you can change your genetic expression by the food you eat. That's called epigenetics, if you hear about that out there. But the idea that you can incorporate foods back in after you've healed is an important point. Also, if you've had a lot of weight loss that's happened during this process, your insulin resistance has probably gone down or gone away entirely. So even your glucose metabolism will have healed, and you may be able to incorporate back more carbohydrates if that was the reason why you did this, obesity and diabetes reversal. And then the idea here that the gut treatment and the gut testing, again, she has wisdom beyond her years, because I find that it's not very accurate at all, and the gut heals itself if you cut carbohydrates out like she did on this paleo protocol. So the measurement of the gut is very complicated. Taking probiotics I don't think is necessary. Most people will just heal when you cut the carbohydrates out, or doing an elimination type of diet like this.
And there's more and more stuff coming out, and sometimes it's hard to find it because it gets kind of poked fun of, online, like people, it's like anything that's kind of in that category. It's like, okay, if it's not the mainstream, like calories in, calories out, we don't really want to hear about it, but it's out there. Like if you take the actual time and you have the discipline and the diligence to look on PubMed and look what's coming out, like you can do a simple search on these things, like in PubMed. PubMed's got a really awesome search interface. Like you can find that the stuff is coming out, and you just have to kind of be your own advocate with that. And
yeah, the research is slowly catching up with the clinical experience. Of course, if you go back, Dr. Atkins was 30 years ahead of the science, because we helped to publish papers on the Atkins diet. So he was using it way before there were papers published. That was for us in the early 2000s. And even today, if you don't have a study section or a that's open to doing this kind of research, you don't have an engine trying to find the mechanism of what's going on, it's hard to get this kind of research funded. And it takes a lot of money to do research. I remember 20 years ago, a sort of satirical, sarcastic editorial was made in a medical journal that basically said that research has become so expensive that only drug companies or companies will be able to afford to do research. And that apparently has come to pass, where it is so difficult to do a study and to get IRB approval and to have it funded and then carried out, that only companies are able to do it, or philanthropists or government or non-governmental organizations. They should be able to do it if there's interest. But still the fee, the ante to get into the research game is quite high.
I started dieting when I was 23 and my autoimmune symptoms went away. I got really angry, and it got pretty bad. Like, I started having panic attacks when I went into hospitals. Which isn't ideal. Like, that's not a good response to have. But I'd been in so many surgeries, and I'd been in the medical system for so long that I was like traumatized by it and angry because I'd had my hip and my ankle replaced. You can't go back from that. And I was like, well, if someone had just said, eliminate all these foods, then I could have saved my hip and my ankle. So I was not happy about that, obviously, and I was very angry at doctors.
Well, this is a natural response, right? If you have gone down the path that is the medical world today, is less important for them to relieve your suffering and all, and more important to follow guidelines and use medicines, and it's actually not a great path to go down. And when you learn that you can reverse it, often anger is the first sort of response. I hope you then turn it into one of trying to help other people understand this. Thus, we have some great influencers and even the people who are helping their family and friends. I see that all the time in my clinic, where patients are then sort of spreading the word among their own peers, that being the one person at work who's influencing other people. The holiday party get-together where they're spreading the word to their friends. And angry responses can help you understand and turn that emotion then back into something productive, I think is a great response that Mikhaila has done.
Surgeons are cut out of that. Not angry at surgeons. I think they're very useful, but like doctors that deal with chronic illness and refuse to look at lifestyle, I was like, do you know how many people you're harming by telling them, oh, we've got it. There's absolutely nothing you can do. Here's the drug you need. It'll help. Even though none of these drugs for chronic illnesses help. Like, I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and they told my parents it's severe enough that she's looking at multiple joints replaced and probably an early death. But here's the drugs that like might help.
Yeah, well, a bit of extreme language, but that's okay. Some drugs do help, but most don't. They manage chronic medical issues. So for chronic medical diseases, you want to find something that reverses it if you can. And there is sort of this big blind spot that doctors apparently don't think that food and nutrition matters, or they might even say the wrong thing. Something helped them, so they say, well, if it must be good for me, it must be good for you. And I have to just kind of echo that most doctors are not helpful and might even harm. And that's kind of tough to digest, isn't it? That doctors are unintentionally, I don't think they want to harm people, but the fact that you're taking away another possible avenue of food, being a cure, and then just giving medication, I think most doctors are just ignorant of it, not colluding with a company to make you ill. But then that's my naive kind of approach, I suppose. Most doctors, if they knew about this, they would tell you, why don't you give it a try? In fact, it only took 30 days of her to change the food to see impact on a serious medical condition called juvenile rheumatoid arthritis.
And they create these like fake stories for these chronically ill people and get them to believe that their only hope is the doctor. And at the same time, they laugh at all these alternative treatments. And that's horrible. And you're in such a vulnerable place when you go to a doctor and tell them how much you're suffering.
Yeah, she has an important point. I mean, how many times have you heard the doctor or the drug company ad say that it's genetic? There's nothing you can do about it. Take our medicine. You can change the genes, the genetic expression. You can't change your genetic makeup, but well, companies are trying to do that actually, but you can change the genetic expression by changing what you eat and what you do. And I think that's a really important point, that there is harm being done by withholding this information, or shall I say, we need to educate the medical world that there's another way to go about it, or you need to be part of this grassroots change and spread the word yourself.
So doctors, I think, are dangerous. They're also the third leading cause of death, doctor mistakes. Like, people don't talk about that. They're like, oh, go to a doctor, it's safer. Statistically, not really. Like, that's not a stat I made up.
Yeah, and it's do you think it's just this myopic view, like where it's hard to look outside, or maybe there's pressure to look from looking outside? Like, there's such a system and a process, and if you think outside of that box as a physician, do you think there's a lot of peer pressure from them where they say, hey, maybe they actually feel this way, they do want to talk about diet, they do want to talk about lifestyle more because they know that this stuff matters, but there's pressure from their scientific peers to not really talk about it?
Yeah, I don't know Mikhaila's experience about that, but I think most of my colleagues just don't know about lifestyle and how important it can be, or they think a keto or carnivore lifestyle is so difficult, if they can't possibly envision doing it, that they don't think their patients could possibly do it. Which really is, I guess, sad that a doctor might think their patient might not just change the food in order to get off medicines. And I've seen people get off diabetes, high blood pressure, arthritis, heartburn medicines, all in one fell swoop. And when people get off insulin, they come back and say, well, I'm very happy not to drink sugar because now I don't have to take shots anymore. So there is a lack of confidence in a doctor with our current patient system, and a lack of understanding how easy a dietary change can be, especially if it's fixing a chronic medical condition that doctors can't fix, they just manage it. So I think there is peer pressure to follow the medications, but I don't think most doctors are aware that there's another way to go about it and go against that because of peer pressure. If anything, we just get more treatment and focused and more education on the drug treatment of things. Medical care has really become medication care.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But also, as a physician, I think you have a moral duty to not believe that, even if you're pressured into it.
Of course.
I mean, I have lots of doctors on my podcast that are amazing, like Chris Palmer. He's great. Dr. Khan, like a lot of longevity doctors. Not all doctors fall into that category, but I think if you go to medical school and it's so difficult to get in, so you know that you're a very smart person to get in, and then you graduate and you go through years of training, and then maybe you specialize and you go through years of training, I think that teaches you to believe that you know everything, and definitely know more than your patients, so you don't have to listen to them. So I think it's like tricky going into medical school without coming out fairly narcissistic. Now, not, like I said, not all doctors fall into that category.
Well, yeah, but it's worse than that. Doctors don't get any nutrition training at all. So really, we're not teaching doctors to factor in what someone's eating. And that needs to change. Or you just go to someone else who understands nutrition. A patient came to me recently and said, well, Dr. Westman, people become a doctor so they can prescribe drugs or do procedures. I mean, that's what doctors do, which was kind of an eye-opening, okay, yeah, I guess so. We're taught not necessarily what's best for the body, but how to prescribe and how to do procedures, because that's what gets paid for, remunerated, and there is a certain pack mentality, if you will, that is being portrayed here, that you're conditioned to be part of this family, this herd mentality. And if none of us think that medicines aren't the only way, if none of us thinks that nutrition is important, that's a problem. And the first thing Mikhaila said in this interview was that she had to wake up to realize that food mattered, and that what a great lesson. It's too bad it took so long for her, but at least it happened.
And I think, unfortunately and unfortunately, with the advent of social media, you're getting more and more docs that are thinking outside of the box because they're realizing, well, wait a minute, if I think outside the box, I can gain a following by being polarizing. And that might not be like their perspective. They're not doing it to become polarizing, but they're saying,
maybe some are.
I'm sure there are. Of course, there's always those people. But there's a lot that are thinking like, wait a minute, like, no, if I really want to help people, then
definitely.
And with the advent of more telehealth and this and that, they realize that like it's not all just like, there has to be a practical lifestyle approach. And I'm seeing, fortunately, at least the docs that are coming on my channel are ones that are like, hey, like I look at this differently. Like,
yeah, I think the message here, being an optimistic one, is a good way to end the interview. Although it's sobering, and you could become pessimistic because the forces at play are very financially grounded. So if you're one individual doctor thinking this way, great. I'd like to see a healthcare system. I'd like to see a clinical set of clinics start behaving in this way, because that's when we'll start to get the healthcare system to change. Until then, you'll have to do it yourself. But there's so many resources for this now. That's my optimistic message, is you don't have to wait for the healthcare system to change.
I was going to say that, like, to give doctors some credit, and my experience is from Canada, but it's got to be hard to see an influx of chronically ill people too, without really knowing what the issue is. Because like the amount of people with an autoimmune disorder or a psychiatric disorder right now, or obesity, it's insane. And so, and I know because I used to not understand aspects of like lifestyle impacting your health. Like I used to be one of those people, like I said, that didn't believe the role of like anything, like sleep, diet, exercise. I basically believed calories, and that was about it. And so I've been there. It's just unfortunate if you refuse to like listen enough, because I feel like if you pay attention, you can kind of figure out that, oh, there's other factors in play, and that can really affect people's lives forever.
Yeah, the medical doctors, in my experience, are just as confused as the general public about nutrition. Again, because they don't have that grounding. The idea that protein comes first. Protein is what we're made of. We're not made of fruit. We're not made of vegetables. Protein's what we're made of. You can get your energy from fat or from carbohydrates. But if you eat carbohydrates, you have to burn them, because we don't store carbohydrates, we store fat. So if you're eating more carbs than your energy is needed for the day, you will store those carbs as fat, and that happens in the liver, that production of fat from the carbs. So that's where fatty liver comes in, even in childhood now. And so if you then go for a medication to treat, which is something that's a lifestyle disease. So if you're using a medication to treat what is a lifestyle disease, you're never going to be really treating the root cause. And so don't expect healthcare systems to understand this. They're basically making their money by doing procedures, operations, or by just having people come through and use medications and managing people. Although if you're a doctor watching, it doesn't take much time for you to bring this up as an important issue and point to one of a number of books that might help people. The way I got into this is 2 of my patients read books and lost over 50 pounds themselves without my help. So if you just give the nod toward something that has evidence behind it, and there are an innumerable number of books that can be helpful, it doesn't take time for you to teach, or it's not difficult. And yes, that will only get a subset of all of your patients, but it doesn't necessarily take time to ask people what they're eating and drinking, especially if you ask people to write it out on a piece of paper and you just review it when you come in the room, like I do. It takes me 30 seconds to find out what someone's been eating and drinking because I make them write it down before I come in the room. So there are a lot of barriers to getting doctors to understanding, acknowledging. Final main issue is we need more randomized controlled trials and high-level research studies to really persuade the system to change. That'll take time, but that is very doable to actually show with high-level science that lifestyle change can be so impactful. I mean, for heaven's sake, this Mikhaila story is one person, but it's been replicated over and over, and I think the power of diet is underestimated, so that you can actually do small studies and get big effects more than would be appreciated or predicted by drug trials, which again don't really address the main issue. I think this was a great video, and I think Mikhaila Peterson's story has been very influential because she's articulate. She's been in the medical system for so long. She knows how to speak the language. And I hope that she's able to help more and more people, not only just with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, but with obesity, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, PCOS, all of these other chronic medical conditions that this type of diet change can help. I hope that's helpful. If you like, please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'm putting out new information Wednesdays and Fridays. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.